I've always believed that love isn't about grand gestures or expensive gifts. No, what keeps a relationship alive, at least for me, are the little things. There are just thinking of you, a text in the middle of a meeting, a selfie from a new coffee shop, or the way you remember how he takes his coffee, even if he sometimes forgets yours. Maybe that's why I still believed in us, even after 7 years of marriage, 2 moves across the country, and more career changes than I could count. I still thought the magic lived in the tiny, everyday details. So when my husband, Ryan, told me he'd be heading to San Diego for a week-long tech conference, I decided to give him a small, happy surprise. We'd been living in Austin for the last 3 years, both chasing new starts, me with my home design business, Ryan with his role at a software startup that kept him traveling more often than either of us would like. His schedule was always jam-packed, but we promised to make time for each other, even when we're together. It meant a video call at midnight from some sterile hotel room. That Wednesday, the day after he left, I was missing him more than I'd admit. It was late afternoon and the sun was streaming through the kitchen window, lighting up the piles of paint samples and inverses on our table. I was drinking lukewarm coffee, catching up on paperwork, when I spotted his contact on my phone, his face in that silly, grinning profile photo I'd taken at Lake Tahoe last year. Maybe he needed to see a familiar face. Maybe I did. I hit the video call button without thinking twice. He picked up after a couple of rings, but instead of the relaxed, sleepy-eyed smile I'd been hoping for, his face flashed onto the screen with a look that stopped me cold. There was a flicker of surprise. No, it was more than that. Panic, maybe. His eyes darted off camera for a split second, then snapped back to me. And just like that, the look vanished, replaced by his practiced, easy grin. The smile he used in board meetings or when charming new clients. "Hey, sweetheart." Ryan's voice came through, too loud, too cheerful. It almost sounded forced. I felt my own smile falter before I could stop it, but I made sure to recover. I've always been good at keeping my cool, even when the ground shifts beneath my feet. "Hey, you," I answered, trying to sound breezy. "Did I catch you at a bad time?" "Not at all," he said, his eyes still not quite meeting mine. "Just got back from a long day. Meetings, more meetings. You know how it is." He reached for something off-screen, maybe a coffee mug, but his hand was shaking just enough for me to notice. I nodded along, my heart thumping a little harder than it should have. We chatted about nothing for a minute or two: Austin's brutal heat, the never-ending renovations on the neighbor's porch, how our dog, Oliver, had managed to get into the recycling bin again. All normal, all perfectly rehearsed. But underneath, there was a tension I couldn't ignore. I found myself searching the background of his hotel room: beige curtains, a nondescript painting, and the edge of a king-size bed covered in neat, white linens. He'd picked a corner room, it looked like. I tried to convince myself it was all fine, that I was being paranoid, but something about the way his eyes kept flickering to the side made me uneasy. "You look tired," I said, studying him. "Rough day?" He let out a little laugh. "Just the usual. Conference people never stop talking. I'd kill for some of your homemade chili right about now." He tried to sound light, but I caught the edge in his voice, the way his jaw clenched ever so slightly. We talked for a few more minutes. He told me about some keynote speaker he'd barely listened to, about a fancy lunch his company had paid for. I described my afternoon: running errands, walking Oliver through Zilker Park, even the weird bluebird that kept tapping at our back window. All the while, I felt that heavy, invisible weight growing in the space between us. I've always trusted my instincts. And in that moment, every nerve in my body was quietly screaming that something was wrong. Just as I was about to say goodbye, to let him get back to his busy schedule, it happened. In the background, just for a second, I saw it. A flicker of movement. The hotel room's wall mirror caught a reflection, a woman's hand, pale and delicate, adjusting her hair behind him. It wasn't mine. It was gone as quickly as it appeared, but my mind froze, replaying the image on a loop. I forced my smile to stay fixed, my voice even. "Who's there with you?" I asked, my tone casual, as if it didn't matter at all. Ryan didn't even blink. "Nobody, just me." "Why?" I swallowed. "Must have been your shadow," I said, hating how weak my voice sounded. He smiled, but now I could see the nervousness in his eyes. "You worry too much, Jess." Maybe I did. But right then, for the first time, I realized I might have been worrying too little. When I finally ended the call, my hands were still a stone, but my insides were buzzing. I stared at my own reflection in the kitchen window for a long time. My face looked so calm, so composed. If only Ryan could have seen the storm brewing behind my eyes. I tried to talk myself down. It could have been anything, a housekeeper, a colleague, maybe even a trick of the light. But the unease clung to me. I knew the difference between my usual anxiety and the sharp edge of intuition. This was not paranoia. This was survival instinct. Later that evening, I wandered around our little Austin house, every corner humming with memories of Ryan and me. The paint color in the living room we'd argued over, the old records we played on lazy Sunday mornings, the scratched floor where Oliver's pores slid in wild circles. I paused by our gallery wall, a dozen frames filled with our life, holidays, anniversaries, those first blurry selfies from when we'd moved in together. Everything looked the same, but it all felt different. I caught myself glancing in every mirror, half expecting to see something that didn't belong. Betrayal isn't loud. It's a slow leak, a chill under the skin. I did what any reasonable woman would do. I tried to distract myself. I scrolled social media, replied to a few clients about color palettes and throw pillows, watered the plants. But my mind kept looping back to that woman's hand. Had Ryan always been this good at hiding things, or had I just never wanted to see them? At 10:30 p.m., Ryan texted, "Good night, beautiful. Miss you already." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering. Finally, I replied, "Night, love you too." 3 words, sent automatically. I wondered if he'd notice if I stopped saying them one day. Sleep didn't come easy. When it finally did, my dreams were restless and tangled, a jumble of hotel hallways, unfamiliar voices, Ryan's face half hidden in shadow. I woke up tired, eyes gritty, heart heavy. The next day, I went through the motions. Met a client at a coffee shop in South Congress, did a site visit for a nursery redo, called my mom. All the normal things. But even as I laughed and smiled, a small voice kept asking, "What if you already know the answer?" When I got home, Oliver met me at the door, tail wagging like nothing in the world was wrong. I hugged him a little too tightly, burying my face in his fur. He whined, licking my cheek, and for a moment I felt like crying. But I didn't. Not yet. After dinner, I sat at my laptop, staring at our shared account activity. I'd never needed to check up on Ryan before, Trust had always been our currency. But now, as I scanned through the bank statements, I felt more like a private investigator than a wife. There, 2 dinners charged to the card in the last 3 days, both at nice places in Dallas. Not San Diego. My heart stuttered. He hadn't even bothered to stick to his story. The times didn't match the conference schedule he'd sent me, either. I opened his calendar, shared with me for years, no secrets, right? I started checking the addresses for his meetings. A couple lined up with real conference locations, but others, they didn't match anything at all. One address was a boutique hotel, not even close to the tech event center. My hands shook. I sipped my lukewarm coffee and took a slow, deep breath. You're not crazy, I whispered to myself, even if part of me wanted to be. I closed my eyes and thought about our last anniversary. Just 6 months earlier. We'd gone to a music festival in Houston, danced under string lights, kissed by the food trucks. I remembered thinking, this is it. This is happiness. Was I wrong? Was I ever really happy, or just playing a role? Suddenly, I wanted to call Ryan. I wanted to demand the truth, to yell, to make him explain every charge and every lie. But I didn't. Not yet. My dad used to say, never play your hand until you know what everyone else is holding. I decided I'd wait, watch, and listen. That night, I FaceTimed him again. He answered quickly, the same hotel room behind him, the curtains drawn. He looked a little more relaxed, but I saw the tightness in his jaw. We talked about nothing, his busy day, and my new client, the weather. I laughed at his dumb conference jokes, even as I scanned every inch of the screen. I waited for another glimpse of the mysterious woman. I watched for a shadow, a reflection, a piece of evidence. He asked me about my day, his eyes darting just off to the side, as if someone was there with him. I answered in detail, even more than usual, giving him every excuse to slip, every opportunity for his story to unravel. But he played it cool. Almost too cool. After we hung up, I sat in the darkness, phone pressed to my chest, listening to my own heartbeat echo in my ears. The ache inside me grew sharper, but so did my resolve. I would not let him see me break. Not yet. Instead, I wrote a note to myself, in the margins of my planner. The mirror never lies. By the next morning, I knew I couldn't just let things sit. I was living in a split reality. In one, I was the same loving wife I'd always been. In the other, I was an undercover observer, collecting clues in a world that suddenly felt foreign. The ordinary things, brewing coffee, folding laundry, answering emails, had become almost surreal, like I was going through the motions in someone else's life. Ryan sent me another good morning text, a photo of his hotel breakfast, eggs, bacon, a pile of pancakes. Not as good as yours, the caption read, complete with a winking emoji. I stared at it for a moment, studying the background. There was nothing out of place, nothing I could point to and say, this is proof. But even his jokes felt different now, too rehearsed, a little too perfect. I spent the day half present, floating through meetings and design consultations while a quiet strategy formed in my mind. I'd always thought I'd be the type of woman who confronted things head-on, who demanded answers and didn't let go until she got them. But here I was, playing it cool, letting him think I was still in the dark. Maybe I was just stalling for time, or maybe some part of me needed to see how far he would go. When evening came, I set a glass of wine on the porch and called my best friend, Leah, in Chicago. She was the one person I could talk to without having to pretend. "Jess, what's wrong?" she asked after I barely said hello. I hesitated, choosing my words with care. "Do you ever just feel like something's off, but you can't prove it?" She didn't answer right away. "Is this about Ryan?" I took a breath, feeling the knot in my chest tighten. "I think he's lying to me, Lear. About this whole trip. I saw something on our call, a woman's hand, in his hotel room." "Did you ask him about it?" "Sort of. He denied it, of course. But his being so careful. Too careful." I paused, swallowing hard. I checked our accounts, his calendar. Nothing lines up. Lear's voice softened, fierce and warm. "Jess, you know your gut is usually right. But you don't have to do this alone." "Thanks," I whispered. "But for now, I just need to know the truth before I decide what to do. I can't just accuse him and be wrong. I don't want to be that person." She understood, like she always did. We talked until the sun dipped low, her encouragement steady in my ear. I promised I'd call her if anything happened. That night, I lay in bed thinking about the woman I was becoming, someone quieter, sharper, more observant. I replayed every conversation with Ryan in my mind, looking for cracks in his stories. I thought about all the times he'd said, "You worry too much." All the times I'd believed him. But not this time. The next day, I sent Ryan a text. "How's the conference? Meet anyone interesting?" He replied with a photo of a crowded ballroom and a generic answer about networking. I zoomed in, searching for anything out of place. Was that the same jacket I'd seen draped on the chair in his hotel room? Was that the woman's laugh in the background of his last call? I started a new habit. Every time we FaceTimed, I took screenshots. A little obsessive, maybe, but I needed evidence, something to anchor my growing suspicion. The digital album on my phone filled up with images of hotel decor, reflections, fleeting shadows. I looked for patterns, replayed every call like a detective. One evening, Ryan told me he was too tired for a call. "Long dinner, babe. Can we talk in the morning?" I forced a cheerful reply, "Of course, get some rest." Instead, I scrolled through his social media. Nothing new, no check-ins, no photos, not even a work hard, play harder post. That was odd for Ryan. He loved humble bragging about his trips. I checked his LinkedIn. A few new connections from Dallas. Women, mostly. One profile caught my eye. Red hair, works in software sales. I tapped through her public photos, stopping on a shot at the same hotel Ryan was supposedly staying at. My blood went cold. "Now you're being crazy," I told myself. "This proves nothing." But I saved the photo anyway. On Thursday, I called the hotel, pretending to be his assistant. "Hi, I'm just checking on a package for Mr. Ryan Bennett, room 1018. The woman at the front desk didn't miss a beat. "Mr. Bennett is in room 1114, ma'am. No packages have arrived yet." "Room 1114? He told me 1018. Another small lie. Another piece of the puzzle. That night, I wrote everything down, every odd detail, every new inconsistency. I read it back, heart pounding. I was no longer just Ryan's wife. I was the woman who watched and waited, collecting evidence while he played house with another woman. And I was done feeling powerless. The next few days unfolded in a strange, quiet tension. Outwardly, nothing had changed. I still watered the plants, ran my design consults, and took Oliver for his afternoon walk along the river trail. I sent Ryan my usual good morning texts, snapped photos of our breakfast nook filled with sunlight, and even called him once or twice, always careful to sound upbeat, casual, just as I always had. But inside, I was living in a parallel world. I was a detective now, not a wife. Each morning, I reviewed my case notes, or as Lear jokingly called them. Every odd charge, every screenshot, every slip in Ryan's stories. I started building a timeline. When he claimed to be in San Diego, he was actually in Dallas. The day he had a client lunch, he was at a restaurant miles from the convention center. The pieces weren't just adding up, they were screaming the truth. I started watching old memories with new eyes. I remembered last year's business trip to Atlanta, the one where he'd come home smelling like a different cologne and said he'd run into a messy spill at the hotel bar. I'd never questioned it then. Or the time I saw a lipstick mark on a coffee cup in his car, and he said a barista had handed it to him by mistake. Little things, so easy to ignore when you trust someone. Now, every innocent moment felt like a missed red flag. On Friday, I decided to stop waiting for Ryan's next lie. I called the tech company he supposedly worked for, using the number on their website, pretending to ask for him about a scheduling mix-up. "Oh, Ryan's not at the San Diego conference this week," the cheerful receptionist said. "He's working remote, covering Dallas accounts." Her voice was polite, clueless. I felt my stomach knot. "Thank you, that helps a lot," I said, then hung up before my voice could betray me. That night, Ryan texted me, "I just ordered room service, can't wait to come home. Miss you, Jess." For the first time, I didn't reply right away. I just stared at the message, feeling oddly calm. Instead of responding, I opened my laptop and started going deeper. I checked our joint email for travel confirmations. There they were, 2 bookings under Ryan's name. One for the Dallas hotel, and a dinner reservation for a Ryan Bennett and guest. No conference registration. No work expenses from San Diego. I found receipts for a spa appointment at the Dallas hotel, billed under his credit card. I recognized the spa. It was a couple's special. He hadn't even bothered to hide it. I took screenshots of everything, every email, every charge. My digital folder grew fat with proof. I was surprised by my own cold efficiency. Each discovery hurt less than the one before. My heartbreak had gone numb, replaced by determination. I called Lear. "I have what I need," I said. "It's not just a hunch now. It's fact." She sighed. "Are you okay?" I didn't know how to answer. Was I? You're not broken. I think I'm just done. I paused, listening to Oliver snoring on the couch beside me. "Lear, I need to see this with my own eyes. I need to be the one who decides how this ends. Not him." Lear hesitated, then asked, "What are you going to do?" I looked out the window at the Texas stars. "I'm going to Dallas." The next morning, I packed an overnight bag, just the essentials, nothing dramatic. I dressed in jeans and a navy t-shirt, the sort of outfit I'd wear for a client install, comfortable and forgettable. I booked myself a room at Ryan's hotel, using my own last name. Before I left, I wrote a note to myself on a scrap of paper, tucking it into my bag. You are stronger than this moment. The drive north was 4 hours of steady, silent thinking. The highway shimmered in the Texas sun, music playing low, the air thick with anticipation. I went over my plan again and again, check in quietly, confirm he's there, see it for myself. No confrontations. Not yet. I wanted truth, not drama. When I pulled into the hotel parking lot, my heart was racing but my hands were steady. The lobby smelled like expensive perfume and furniture polish, just as I remembered from my last stay. The staff barely looked at me as I checked in. I was just another tired business traveler. In my room, I sat on the bed and stared at the ceiling. I felt calm, almost detached. I texted Ryan, how's your day going? Long meetings? He replied 10 minutes later, were so tired. Going to call it an early night. Miss you. I almost laughed. The lies felt small now, like a poorly rehearsed play. I took a deep breath and headed for the elevator. His room was 2 floors up. When I reached the hallway, I waited a moment outside his door, listening. There was laughter inside, 2 voices. A woman's, bright and familiar. I knocked softly. The laughter stopped. I heard whispering, the low thump of hurried footsteps. The door cracked open, and Ryan's face appeared, shock and fear etched deep. Jess? His voice broke, as if seeing me was the last thing in the world he expected. Behind him, I glimpsed the red-haired woman from the LinkedIn photo, clutching a hotel robe around her. She froze, eyes wide. For a heartbeat, none of us spoke. The silence was thick, full of all the things we'd never said. I looked Ryan in the eye and said, very quietly, I just needed to see it for myself. Time seemed to warp in that hallway. For a few seconds, we were just 3 people frozen in place. Me, Ryan, and his red-haired colleague, ear no longer bound by old promises or polite small talk. The look on Ryan's face was a mix of guilt, panic, and a desperate hope that maybe, somehow, I hadn't seen enough to know the full story. But I had. He started to speak, his mouth opening and closing as if he were searching for the right script. Jess, this isn't. I raised my hand, stopping him. I didn't want an explanation, not when the truth was written so clearly in the silence between us. I looked at the woman behind him, who was staring at the floor, her cheeks burning red. For a moment, I actually felt sorry for her, caught in a lie she hadn't signed up for, or maybe just another woman who believed his stories, just as I had, for years. Don't worry, I said softly, I'm not here to make a scene. Ryan's shoulders sagged, relief flashing in his eyes. Maybe he thought that meant I'd forgive him, that I'd walk away and pretend nothing had happened, the way he'd probably hoped all along. But he didn't know me as well as he thought. I took a step back, my voice steady. I just needed to see it with my own eyes. You owe me nothing but honesty now. He tried again, voice trembling. Jess, please, can we just talk? Not now, I said, keeping my tone flat. Not here. I turned and walked away, my footsteps echoing down the hallway. My mind was racing, but my body moved on autopilot, through the elevator, back to my room, where I sat on the edge of the bed and let the reality sink in. It didn't come as a sharp stab, but as a slow, cold wave, washing over everything I thought I knew. Strangely, it was almost a relief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. My instincts had been right all along. The betrayal was real, not a ghost conjured by loneliness or anxiety. For a long time, I just sat there, watching the city lights flicker outside the window. Down below, Dallas buzzed with Friday night energy, people laughing, cars moving, music spilling out of rooftop bars. The world kept spinning, utterly indifferent to the implosion of my marriage. My phone vibrated, a text from Ryan. "Jess, I'm sorry. Can we please talk? Please. I can explain." I put the phone down without replying. I didn't need any more explanations. Instead, I called Lear. She picked up immediately. I saw them. Lear. Together. It's real. "Oh, Jess." Her voice was thick with tears and fury all at once. "What are you going to do?" I let the question hang between us. What was I going to do? For years, I'd built my world around the life Ryan and I were supposed to be living. The cozy house, the silly rituals, the promise of forever. Now, that world felt as fragile as spun glass. One touch, and it shattered. But underneath the pain, there was something else. Something like strength. "I'm not going to fall apart," I said. "Not for him. Not for this." We talked for a long time. Leah promised to fly down if I needed her, but I told her not yet. I needed to get through this on my own terms. The next morning, I checked out of the hotel before sunrise. As I drove back to Austin, the sky was painted with streaks of pink and gold. It felt symbolic, like the world was telling me that even after devastation, something new could begin. Back at home, the silence was different. Not empty, but full of possibility. I made a cup of coffee, sat on the porch, and watched Oliver chase squirrels across the yard. My phone buzzed over and over, calls from Ryan, then from his mother, then finally a single message from the woman in Dallas. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know." I didn't respond. It wasn't her I needed answers from. I spent the day in motion, cleaning, organizing, making lists. I opened a new bank account, moved what money I could, changed the passwords on every account Ryan and I shared. I found the number for a lawyer recommended by Lear's sister and made an appointment. Each step was like stacking bricks, building a new foundation under my feet. By evening, I felt exhausted but strangely at peace. I sat at the kitchen table and started writing a letter to Ryan. I didn't want to scream or beg for explanations. I wanted my words to be clear, strong, and final. "Ryan, I saw you. I saw everything. This isn't a mistake or a misunderstanding. This is a choice you made, again and again, and I can't forgive it, not this time. You said you loved me, but you loved your secrets more. By the time you read this, I'll have already started the process to end our marriage. I don't hate you. I just choose myself now. Jess." When I finished, I folded the letter and left it on the kitchen counter. The next morning, I called my lawyer, my voice steady and calm. "I'm ready," I told her. "I want a divorce." The hardest part wasn't letting go of Ryan. It was letting go of the version of myself who had believed in him so fiercely. But as I looked in the mirror, I saw a woman who was still standing. Not unbroken, but unbowed. A woman who knew her own worth, even after betrayal. I realized then, this was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of my freedom. The days after I sent that letter became a blur of practical tasks and sudden waves of emotion. I moved through the hours with a strange sense of purpose, as if action itself was a lifeline. Each item I crossed off my to-do list, cancelling a joint credit card, boxing up Ryan's things, confirming the appointment with my lawyer, became another step away from the woman I'd been and closer to the one I was becoming. Ryan called, texted, and emailed relentlessly at first. Each message sounded more frantic than the last. "Jess, please. I made a mistake. Can we talk? You don't have to do this. We can fix it. Let's go to counseling. Please, just one more chance." For the first time, I didn't feel responsible for his emotions. I didn't owe him my forgiveness or my pain. I'd already spent years explaining away his absences, accepting his stories, patching over my doubts with hope. Now, my only responsibility was to myself. I didn't block his number, though. I wanted him to know, day by day, that the silence was my answer. My world was smaller, but clearer. I made a habit of walking Oliver every morning through the quiet neighborhood, letting the rhythm of our steps and the sharp air clear my mind. Neighbors waved, asked about Ryan, and I just smiled, saying he was your way on business. The old me would have felt embarrassed, maybe even ashamed. Now, I only felt a quiet pride in protecting my story until I was ready to share it on my own terms. One evening, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at my laptop, reviewing the paperwork for the divorce. It wasn't just about splitting assets or dividing property. It was a declaration. I was choosing myself. I even started making small changes around the house. I painted the guest room a deep teal, bought new throw pillows, rearranged the furniture in the living room. Each change felt like a tiny act of rebellion, a way to reclaim the space as my own. I'd expected to feel angry all the time, but more often, I felt a kind of fierce clarity. It came in waves, sometimes while I was driving, or when I stood under the hot spray of the shower and let the steam fog the mirror. I wasn't defined by Ryan's betrayal. I was more than the story he tried to write for me. One afternoon, Leah called and insisted on flying down for a girls' weekend. "No arguments," as she said. "I'm showing up with ice cream and trashy movies." She arrived with 2 giant pints of Ben & Jerry's, a stack of magazines, and a gift bag filled with fuzzy socks and a new mug that read, and nevertheless, she persisted. We spent 2 days doing all the things I hadn't let myself do in weeks, sleeping in, ordering takeout, laughing until my stomach hurt. We also talked about the marriage, about what I'd lost, but also about what I was starting to gain. I realized, in the safe warmth of Leah's company, how much I'd been shrinking myself to keep Ryan comfortable. I'd been holding my breath for so long that breathing freely felt almost revolutionary. The night before she left, Leah hugged me tight. "You are going to be so much more than okay, Jess. You're already doing it. I'm proud of you." For the first time, I believed her. The world outside moved on. Spring arrived in Texas with wildflowers and thunderstorms. My business picked up again, old clients returning, new ones calling. I threw myself into work, not to escape, but because creating beautiful spaces for other people gave me joy and confidence. I was building something that was mine alone. Occasionally, I still caught myself glancing at my phone, half expecting a message from Ryan. I let myself feel the ache, but it was fading, replaced by something like relief. The more time passed, the more I realized I hadn't really lost my marriage. I'd lost an illusion. I started attending a Saturday morning yoga class at the local studio, a ritual I'd given up for Ryan's sake when he complained about wasting weekends. The first class was hard, my muscles tight, my mind wandering. But by the third week, I found myself relaxing into the stretches, loving the way my body felt strong and capable. After class one morning, a woman from the studio invited me to join her and some friends for coffee. I almost declined out of habit. Ryan had always hated when I made plans without him, but I stopped myself. This is your life now, Jess. Say yes. So I did. That weekend, I hosted a dinner at my place, a handful of new friends, Lear on FaceTime from Chicago, laughter bouncing off the walls that once felt too quiet. I looked around the table at the faces, some old, some new, and felt gratitude bubbling up. My life was smaller, yes, but it was filled with people who saw me, the real me. When the last guest left and the house was finally silent, I curled up on the couch with Oliver, feeling the peaceful kind of tired that only comes after a day well lived. I thought about the journey from that first video call to this moment. The distance between the woman who doubted her instincts and the woman who trusted them. The journey from heartbreak to hope. And I realized, maybe strength isn't about never breaking. Maybe it's about what you build when you finally decide to start over. The final weeks before the divorce became official were a strange, suspended time. Legally, Ryan and I were still married. In reality, though, our lives had split into two separate parts, like train tracks veering away in opposite directions. He still tried to reach out, sometimes late at night, sending long, rambling texts about memories we shared, how he missed me, how he would do anything for another chance. I read them, but I didn't reply. His words felt like messages from another life, one I was no longer a part of. Each day I felt a little lighter. I noticed things I hadn't allowed myself to enjoy in years, the sound of rain on the roof while I worked, the pleasure of a book and a cup of tea in bed, the joy of making weekend plans with no one to answer to. Even the house seemed brighter. I changed the locks, finally. I hung new curtains and started a vegetable garden in the backyard, a dream I'd put off for years, always waiting for the right time. One morning, while sorting through a closet, I found a box of old wedding photos. For a moment, I hesitated, bracing myself for pain. But as I flipped through them, I realized I could look at each picture and remember the hope I'd felt back then without longing for it. I didn't want to erase the past, just put it in its proper place. I boxed up Ryan's things, his books, the ugly ties he insisted were lucky, a collection of sports memorabilia that had always cluttered the office shelves. I set them on the porch for him to collect. He came by quietly, mid-afternoon, when he thought I'd be out. He didn't ring the bell. Later, I watched through the window as he loaded the boxes into his car, pausing for a moment to stare at the house, then driving away without looking back. I felt nothing. Just a calm certainty that I was doing the right thing. A few days later, I met with my lawyer to sign the final divorce papers. The meeting was short, the legal language cold and impersonal, but as I signed my name for the last time as a Jessica Bennett, I felt a quiet triumph. I'd thought the end would be dramatic, maybe even cinematic, a slammed door, a shouting match, tears in the rain. But the truth was quieter, steadier. I walked out of the office into the Austin sunshine, my shoulders back, my heart steady. That evening, Lear called to celebrate. "You're officially a free woman," she cheered. What's next? It was a good question. For so long, My life had been organized around someone else's needs and plans. I was finally in charge of my own story. Whatever I want, I said, and meant it. In the following weeks, I started saying yes to things I'd always wanted to try. I joined a book club at a local bookstore, where the group discussed everything from thrillers to poetry. I took a weekend trip to New Orleans by myself, eating bayonets on a park bench, listening to jazz, wandering through old streets without anyone asking, how much longer, or what's next? For the first time, my life felt like mine. I started a journal, writing not just about what had happened, but what I wanted for my future. I wrote about the kind of love I hoped to find one day, not the kind built on pretending or silence, but one grounded in honesty, laughter, and trust. I wrote about wanting to travel, to design my own line of home goods, to host more dinner parties, to learn to dance without feeling self-conscious. I realized, as the weeks rolled by, that the most important promise I could make was the one I made to myself. Never again would I ignore my intuition or silence my own voice to keep someone else comfortable. Never again would I shrink myself to fit into someone else's version of love. Summer in Austin was already turning hot, the air thick with the scent of wildflowers and barbecue. My business was thriving. I booked more clients than ever, and even took on a project to redesign the local women's shelter. Working with other women who had rebuilt their lives gave me a new sense of purpose. I found myself sharing my story with some of them, not as a cautionary tale, but as proof that new beginnings are possible. One afternoon, as I walked Oliver along the river, a neighbor waved from across the street. "Jess, you look happier these days." And I realized she was right. I didn't just look happier, I was. Not every day was easy. There were moments of grief and doubt, loneliness and anger. But they were always balanced by moments of pride and hope, and an expanding sense of possibility. One Friday night, I hosted another dinner, this time, a bigger crowd, with friends from yoga, the book club, and a few neighbors I'd gotten to know. As we laughed over homemade tacos and toasted margaritas on the porch, I caught my reflection in the sliding glass door, hair messy from the humid night, cheeks flushed with laughter. For the first time in ages, I saw a woman who belonged to herself, a woman who had weathered the worst and still found reasons to celebrate. After everyone left, I sat under the string lights, feet bare in the grass, Oliver's head on my knee. I thought about Ryan for the first time in weeks, not with bitterness or regret, but with a gentle sort of forgiveness. He'd been a chapter in my story, but he wasn't the ending. That was up to me. A few months after the divorce, I woke up early one Saturday, the air in my bedroom sweet with the scent of jasmine from the garden. Sunlight streamed in through the open window, and for once, my mind wasn't racing with anxiety. I felt at home in my own skin, a feeling that had eluded me for years. I made pancakes, letting the kitchen fill with music. Oliver danced around my feet, begging for a bite, and I gave him the first one, laughing at his unbridled joy. I snapped a photo and sent it to Lear with the caption, "This is what freedom tastes like." She replied instantly, "Proud of you, Jess. So much more to come." It was true. My life felt spacious, brimming with possibility. I finally stopped waiting for the other shoe to drop. There was no one to disappoint, no secrets lurking in the corners. My days had become my own. I started each morning with gratitude, listing 3 things I was thankful for: my loyal dog, my health, and the fierce, quiet strength I'd earned. I poured my energy into my work. My design business had never been busier, and for the first time, I let myself imagine growing it into something bigger. I started sketching ideas for a new line of home accessories, each design stamped with the lessons I'd learned about resilience, about creating beauty from chaos, about the peace that comes from truly trusting yourself. And I let myself explore the city again. I went to live music shows, tried new restaurants, took a pottery class, signed up for a hiking group. Sometimes, when the sun set pink over the river, I'd sit on the rooftop with a glass of wine and just breathe, amazed at the simple joy of being alone and not lonely. Inevitably, there were still shadows. Some days, I'd remember the way I'd once clung to the hope that Ryan would change, that our old life could be salvaged. Sometimes I missed the companionship, the familiarity of a shared history. But more and more, I saw those memories as stepping stones rather than anchors. They were part of my story, but they no longer defined my future. One afternoon, while shopping at a local farmer's market, I ran into the red-haired woman from Dallas. She recognized me instantly, her expression one of awkwardness and remorse. For a moment, we both stood there, the weight of everything unspoken filling the space between us. She took a breath. "Jess, I just want to say, I'm sorry. If I'd known, I would never have." I surprised myself by offering a gentle smile. "You didn't owe me anything. We were both lied to." She nodded, gratitude softening her face. "I hope you're okay." "I am," I said, and I meant it. As I walked away, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. I'd spent months dreading a moment like this, but in truth, it was just another sign that I was moving forward. I didn't need to carry anger anymore. My life was too full, too precious, to waste on bitterness. The weeks blurred into summer. My garden flourished, ripe tomatoes, wild sunflowers, basil overflowing from its pot. I spent lazy evenings with friends, or reading on the porch with Oliver curled beside me. I made new traditions, small and sacred: Sunday morning pancakes, Friday night movies, long walks under the stars. One day, Lear visited from Chicago, bringing her unstoppable energy and a bottle of champagne. To freedom, as she toasted, raising her glass. To new chapters, and to the woman who finally chose herself. We clinked glasses, laughter bubbling up between us. Later, she turned serious, her gaze steady. "Are you happy, Jess? Not just fine, not just better, really, truly happy?" I thought about it for a moment, letting the question settle in my bones. Then I nodded. Yes. For the first time in a long time, I'm not waiting for something to go wrong. I'm not afraid of being alone. I feel like I belong to myself again. Lear grinned. "That's all I ever wanted for you." Toward the end of summer, I stood on my porch one evening, the air buzzing with cicadas. The sun slipped behind the rooftops, setting the sky on fire with orange and gold. I thought about the journey I'd taken, from the first flash of suspicion on a video call, to heartbreak and confrontation, to rebuilding and claiming my freedom. I'd learned that betrayal is not the end. It's just the beginning of something truer, if you're brave enough to face it. I had faced it. I had chosen myself. And as I stood there, breathing in the dusk, I realized I wasn't just surviving. I was living. Really, truly living, messy, joyful, and free. A new story, and this time, I was the one writing it.